In this video, I am revealing the 7 fast food favorites that might be quietly wrecking your heart health, especially if you are over 50 and still grabbing them on the go. Number 7. McDonald's Big Mac. You know the line, "It is just one burger, what is the harm?" I had a neighbor who swore by a similar logic. I think he said something along the lines of, "As long as it is just the burger," which in theory should be alright, and I thought it was right, up until his doctor handed him a blood pressure reading that looked like a bad lottery number. Perhaps this applies to an actual homemade burger, but in this case it is all about the famous Big Mac. The Big Mac is not just a nostalgic trip down memory lane, it is a sodium and fat freight train hitting an older heart at full speed. One sandwich comes in at about 1,060 milligrams of sodium. For most seniors, that is roughly 70% of the American Heart Association's ideal daily limit in one sitting. And it is not just a little salt. As we age, our arteries stiffen, our bodies hold on to sodium longer, and our hearts have to work harder to push against that added fluid load. The result? A dangerous spike in blood pressure, one of the biggest triggers for heart attack and stroke. And then there is the saturated fat, around 11 grams in a single Big Mac. That is roughly 85% of what you are supposed to have in a whole day if you are trying to keep your heart in check. This is not just a number on a nutrition label, it is cholesterol fuel for plaque buildup inside arteries that already have decades of wear and tear. You might think, well, at least they got rid of trans fats. Not so fast. Artificial ones are banned, yes, but there is still about a gram of naturally occurring trans fat from the beef and cheese. Small? Sure. But stack it on top of all that saturated fat and sodium, and you have got a perfect storm for raising LDL cholesterol and stiffening blood vessels. The bun and sweet sauce? That is where the hidden sugar and refined carbs sneak in, about 7 grams of sugar and a quick digesting bread that spikes blood sugar. For older adults with slower metabolism or insulin resistance, that is a fast track to post-meal triglyceride spikes, which hit the heart just as hard over time. And here is something you will not see on the menu board. 2 beef patties in a Big Mac also feed gut bacteria that produce TMAO, a compound linked in research to artery aging and higher heart attack risk. The kicker? Studies show TMAO levels drop in just a few weeks if you cut back on red meat. So yes, it is reversible, but not if you are still ordering this thing twice a week. Even the way it is cooked plays against you. Those seared patties are not just juicy, they are loaded with AGEs, inflammatory byproducts from high heat cooking. In younger bodies, that is less of a problem. In older arteries already fighting inflammation, it is like pouring gasoline on a smoldering fire. What makes it even trickier is the health halo effect. McDonald's loves to point out their 100% beef and no artificial preservatives, except the pickles, which makes it sound clean. But the main heart risks, sodium, saturated fat, refined carbs, have not gone anywhere. In fact, most of the sodium is not even from the salt shaker. It is hidden in the bun, cheese, patty seasoning, pickles, and sauce. Now imagine adding fries and a soda to the mix. A medium Big Mac meal jumps to about 1,120 calories, over half a day's energy for many older adults, plus more sodium, sugar, and fats your body does not need. And those fries? They are often cooked in oil that is reheated all day long, creating compounds that inflame blood vessels and drive up blood pressure. I get it, there is nostalgia baked into every bite. The Big Mac is predictable, convenient, and tastes exactly like it did when you were 25. But now, that comfort comes with a bill your heart has to pay. And the price is not printed on the menu, it shows up in your blood pressure, cholesterol panel, and cardiologist's calendar. Here is the part they do not tell you. Swap it out even part of the time, and you can actually reverse some of the damage. Blood pressure improves within days of cutting sodium. TMAO levels drop in weeks when you scale back red meat. It is not about never having one again, it is about not making it your Tuesday lunch tradition. Because for seniors, a Big Mac is not just a burger. It is a slow, steady push in the wrong direction. And the heart you have been carrying for decades, it deserves better than that. Number 6. Popeye's Classic Chicken Sandwich. You know how some meals feel like a little treat you earned after a long day? I used to think that way, until I learned one of these can give your heart more trouble than a month of skipped workouts. On paper, it is just crispy chicken, pickles, and a bun. In reality, it is a sodium and fat bomb dressed up as comfort food. One sandwich alone packs about 1,440 milligrams of sodium, almost the American Heart Association's entire ideal daily limit in one sitting. And here is the kicker. As we age, our arteries stiffen, our kidneys do not flush out salt as efficiently, and that big salty hit pushes blood pressure up higher than it would in our younger years. For someone with hypertension or heart failure, one lunch like this can mean swelling in the ankles, restless sleep, or even a heart rhythm that suddenly feels off. Then there is the fat load, 42 grams total, with 14 grams of that being saturated. That is your full day's budget if you are trying to keep LDL cholesterol in check. Add in 2 grams of trans fat, yes, still in there despite the ban on artificial ones, and you have hit a number cardiologists tell you to keep as close to zero as possible. Those fats stiffen arteries, raise bad cholesterol, and speed up plaque buildup, exactly what an older heart does not need. And Popeyes does not just fry that chicken in any old oil. They use beef tallow, which gives it that nostalgic crunch and savory depth, but it is also a straight shot of more saturated fat. Factor in the reality of commercial fryers, oil heated and reheated all day, producing oxidative compounds that irritate and inflame blood vessels, and suddenly that golden crust looks a lot less innocent. The bread is not doing your heart any favors either. That brioche bun and sweet spread load you with about 50 grams of refined carbs and sugar. For older adults, especially those with slower metabolism or insulin resistance, that is a fast track to triglyceride spikes and lower HDL, the good cholesterol that helps clear plaque. And it is not just what you can taste. The chicken fillet is plumped with sodium and potassium phosphates to keep it juicy. That boosts the sodium count even before you add sauces. And those phosphate additives are linked to vascular calcification, hardening of the arteries, particularly in people with kidney issues, which are more common after 50. It is easy to see how this sandwich slides into a routine. You tell yourself it is just a quick grab after errands, or a reward after church. But make it a twice-a-week habit, and you are stacking sodium, saturated fat, and fried food at a level research shows directly increases heart attack and stroke risk, especially in seniors. What makes it tricky is the classic branding. Buttermilk, brioche, white meat. It all sounds like something your grandmother might have made. But behind that warm, homey language is a heavily engineered product loaded with preservatives, hydrogenated oils, MSG, and hidden sugars. It is designed to hit every bliss point, keep you coming back, and leave your arteries paying the tab. And if you are thinking, well, I do not get the combo, just the sandwich, be careful. Add a large Cajun fries, and you are suddenly looking at over 3,200 milligrams of sodium in one meal, double the heart-healthy daily ideal. Even the dipping sauces pile on another few hundred milligrams without you realizing it. The truth is, the Popeyes Classic Chicken Sandwich is not dangerous because it is fast food in the abstract. It is dangerous because every single part of it is built to please your tongue at the expense of your heart. And for someone in their 50s or 60s, that trade-off gets riskier with every bite. You could make excuses. Or you could remember that your heart does not care about nostalgia, it cares about what you feed it today. And this is a heavy burden for it to carry. Number 5. Subway, footlong, meatball, marinara. There is something comforting about that soft white roll, the sweet tang of marinara, and meatballs that remind you of a simpler time when lunch cost $5 and came with a smile. But here is the rub. This sandwich is not doing your heart any favors, especially if you are past the age when you can eat anything and still feel fine the next morning. A footlong clocks in at roughly 2,260 milligrams of sodium. That is basically your whole day's worth in one sitting, and about 50% more than what the American Heart Association says is ideal for someone watching their blood pressure. And if you have hit your 50s or 60s, odds are your arteries are not quite as forgiving as they once were. Salt hits harder now, it makes blood pressure spike faster and stay high longer. And then there is the saturated fat, about 16 grams in the whole sub. The AHA says to keep it under 13 grams a day if you are trying to lower LDL cholesterol. Go over that regularly, and you are not just eating lunch, you are helping plaque settle into your artery walls. It is the kind of slow, silent buildup you do not feel until it is too late. The bread alone sneaks in about 760 milligrams of sodium for the footlong before you have even added meatballs or sauce. Add cheese, and you are looking at closer to 3,000 milligrams of salt without even realizing it. And while the menu proudly says 0 grams trans fat, that does not mean heart-healthy saturated fat is the bigger villain here. Now, the carbs. 104 grams worth, mostly refined white bread and sweetened marinara. That is a fast track to a post-meal triglyceride spike, which is not just a blood sugar thing. High triglycerides are tied to atherosclerosis, and if you are insulin resistant, that spike hits harder and lasts longer. It is the reason you feel sluggish after a big carb-heavy lunch. Here is what most folks miss. The meatballs are not just meat, they are bulked with soy protein concentrate, plus the sauce brings in added sugar and soybean oil. That is the ultra-processed trifecta: reconstituted proteins, added sugars, and industrial oils. Studies keep linking diets high in these foods with increased cardiovascular risk, and it is not hard to see why. Even the so-called healthier swaps do not get you out of trouble. The wrap version? Still around 1,900 milligrams of sodium. The no bready bowl? Roughly 1,560 milligrams, still over the AHA's ideal daily limit. You are dodging some carbs, but the salt stays put. What makes this one tricky is nostalgia. That flavor profile, soft bread, tangy sweet sauce, melty cheese, feels like home. You tell yourself it is better than a greasy burger, and Subway's Eat Fresh slogan still has some halo effect. Plus, the 2 meals for 1 price logic makes it feel like you are being smart with your money. But nutritionally, it is 2 meals worth of salt and fat crammed into one sitting. And here is a fun fact to chew on. In 2020, Ireland's Supreme Court ruled Subway's bread was too sugary to legally be called bread. Different country, different laws, but it is a good reminder that what you think is just a sandwich roll is really a sugar-laced delivery system for meatballs and salt. So yeah, it tastes familiar, it is quick, and it is cheap, but for a senior heart, this sandwich is like inviting trouble to move in and put its feet up. If you are going to indulge, split a 6-inch with someone, skip the cheese, go for the lowest sodium bread, and pile on the veggies. Because this is not the kind of comfort food your heart can afford every week. Number 4. Domino's Ultimate Pepperoni Pizza. This one has comfort food written all over it. Look, I admit it. Once in a while I may order a pie to go along with my Friday, which is movie night. 2 layers of pepperoni, 3 cheeses, and that familiar smell that can pull you in from half a block away. But for anyone already keeping an eye on blood pressure or cholesterol, this is less of a treat and more of a direct hit to the heart. 1 large hand-tossed slice lands you with around 830 milligrams of sodium. That is over half the American Heart Association's ideal daily limit in just 1 slice. And I have yet to meet the person who stops at 1. 2 slices? You have already blown past the healthy range, and for older arteries that are stiffer and more salt-sensitive, that kind of sodium spike can send blood pressure climbing and keep it there. I have seen people wake up the next morning wondering why their rings feel tight. It is the salt hanging around in your system. Then there is the fat. We are talking 8 grams of saturated fat per slice, over half of what a heart-healthy diet allows in a whole day. Add a second slice, and you have crossed the line. And this is not just cheese fat. You are getting it from provolone, parmesan, Asiago, and those stacked pepperonis. That combo fuels LDL cholesterol, which in turn helps plaque settle into artery walls. Once it is there, it does not just vanish, you carry it with you. The pepperoni itself brings its own baggage. Processed meats like this have been linked to a 42% higher risk of heart disease and a 19% higher risk of diabetes in large studies. The sodium and nitrite preservatives that give pepperoni its flavor and rosy color can turn into harmful compounds during high-heat cooking. Seniors with a history of heart trouble do not need that extra risk on the plate. And the crust? Pure white flour with almost no fiber. It digests fast, spiking blood sugar and sending triglycerides up for hours afterward. Younger bodies might recover quicker, but with age and a slower metabolism, that sugar rush and crash hits harder, leaving artery walls inflamed and energy in the basement. I have learned the hard way. Pizza nights in my 30s were a joy. In my 60s, they are a next day headache. What makes this one tricky is how normal it feels. Order a large for the family, grab a couple of slices, and you have already matched a whole day's sodium limit. Go for the XL New York style, and those 2 slices might be the same as 4 regular ones. That is the sleight of hand. Slice size is not what you think, and nutrition tables do not warn you about it. The design of this pizza is intentional. Refined carbs for quick energy, fat for richness, and salt for flavor punch. This is the bliss point that food scientists know keeps you coming back. For someone with a healthy heart, it is still a splurge. For someone in their 50s, 60s, or beyond, it is more like stacking the odds against yourself with every bite. Sure, the nostalgia is strong. Little League nights, Friday paydays, family movie marathons, it is all tied to the smell of pepperoni pizza. But the numbers today are not the numbers from decades ago. Between bigger portions, extra toppings, and more cheese, the modern ultimate pepperoni is a different beast entirely. The real problem? It does not feel dangerous. You are not eating a deep-fried butter stick. It is just pizza, right? But for an older heart, 2 slices here, a few breadsticks there, and you are dealing with elevated blood pressure, higher LDL, and artery inflammation without a single clue from your taste buds. This is not about swearing off pizza forever. It is about realizing that something as ordinary as a couple slices can be a sodium bomb, a saturated fat overload, and a blood sugar spike rolled into one. And if that is a regular part of the week, it is not comfort food anymore. It is just slow, steady wear on the one muscle you cannot replace. Number 3. Taco Bell Crunchwrap Supreme. You ever tell yourself you are eating light by skipping the burger joint and heading to Taco Bell instead? That is how a lot of folks end up with a crunch wrap in their lap, thinking it is a safe middle ground. Trouble is, that folded tortilla is packing more of a heart hit than most people realize. One wrap delivers around 1,200 milligrams of sodium, already over half the American Heart Association's ideal limit for the whole day. And in seniors, salt does not just make you thirsty, it pushes blood pressure higher and keeps it there longer because aging arteries do not relax as easily. The kidneys are slower to clear it too, so the effect lingers. If you have got even mild hypertension, that is a lot of extra pressure on the heart before dinner. Then there is the fat profile. About 6 to 7 grams of saturated fat might not sound like much until you realize that is roughly half your safe daily budget in one go. Saturated fat nudges LDL cholesterol upward and accelerates plaque buildup in arteries that, for many over 50, are already narrowing. Add to that a fried tostada shell hidden inside. Fried foods have been linked to higher rates of heart attacks and heart failure, and you are not exactly doing your ticker a favor. The carb load is another sneaky problem. Between the giant flour tortilla and that crispy shell, you are looking at over 70 grams of refined carbs. In older adults, especially anyone with insulin resistance, those refined carbs spike triglycerides for hours after you eat. Elevated triglycerides drag HDL cholesterol down and inflame artery walls, setting the stage for more damage over time. And this thing is loaded in ways you do not taste right away. The tortilla itself can hide 500 milligrams of sodium. The nacho cheese sauce and creamy chipotle sauce add more, even before you count the seasoned beef. That beef, by the way, is not just beef. It has got fillers, thickeners, and moisture-retaining additives like phosphates, which some research links to vascular calcification in people with kidney trouble. What makes it dangerous is how easy it is to underestimate. It is grilled, it is portable, it is not swimming in grease like a double cheeseburger, so it feels like a lighter choice. But stack it against your daily sodium, fat, and refined carb limits, and it is hitting every red flag a cardiologist warns about. The portion creep does not help either. Combo deals push you to add a drink and sides, and before you know it, you have tripled your salt intake for the day. Taco Bell's Big Cheese It Crunch Wrap box, for example, clocked nearly 3,800 milligrams of sodium. That is well past the daily limit before you even touch breakfast or dinner. I have known people who swear the vegetarian version is a healthier swap, but it still comes in at about 1,100 milligrams of sodium. You might skip the beef, but your arteries will not know the difference when it comes to salt. And the fryer oil? Like at any busy chain, it is reused over and over. That reheating process creates compounds that irritate blood vessels, damage that is harder to repair as you age. It is the kind of food that slips into a routine before you notice. Pick one up after errands, grab one on the way home from a grandkid's game. Suddenly, it is once a week. The flavor is comforting. The habit feels harmless, but the cumulative load on your cardiovascular system is real. So, when you bite into that crunch wrap thinking it is a smart compromise, remember, you are looking at a salt-heavy, fat-heavy, carb-heavy trap wrapped up in a tidy tortilla. It might not feel like trouble today, but your heart will remember it long after the taste fades. Number 2. Burger King Whopper with cheese. If you have been eating these for decades, I get it, they are practically American nostalgia in a wrapper. I still remember when they cost pocket change and did not feel like a gamble for your health. But the Whopper with cheese today? It is a heart hazard wrapped in sesame seeds. And to be honest, at least in my previous experiences, last time I tried the chain, I kid you not, I could not finish my meal. It tasted horrible. It did. Ever since I have not touched the king. One sandwich loads you with about 1,431 milligrams of sodium, almost an entire day's ideal limit in one sitting. And once you are past 50, your body does not handle salt like it used to. The kidneys are slower to clear it, your arteries are less forgiving, and that salty hit sends blood pressure climbing faster and holding there longer. For anyone with creeping hypertension, this is like throwing gas on a smoldering fire. The fat content is not doing you favors either. 18 grams of saturated fat in one burger. That is more than most doctors would want you to have in a whole day if you are trying to keep LDL cholesterol in check. In a younger body, your system might have shrugged it off. In a senior heart, that kind of regular hit speeds up plaque buildup and makes those artery walls even stiffer. What most people miss is how much of the damage comes from what you do not see or taste. The patty is not the only sodium bomb here. It is in the bun, in the pickles, in the ketchup, in the mayo, and in that processed cheese slice that is more chemistry than dairy. That flame-grilled badge of honor? All it means is your burger has been seared at high heat long enough to pick up compounds linked to inflammation and oxidative stress. Not exactly the kind of extra flavor your arteries are begging for. And then there is the sugar and refined carbs from the bun and condiments. They push your blood fats higher after the meal, especially triglycerides, which older bodies struggle to clear quickly. That post-meal spike is exactly the kind of thing cardiologists warn can set the stage for heart trouble down the road. It is easy to convince yourself you are making a better choice by skipping the fries or the soda, but the truth is, the burger alone is already carrying the bulk of the risk. This is not the 1957 Whopper you remember. Over the decades, portions have gotten bigger, sodium has crept higher, and the whole nutritional profile has shifted from indulgence to overload. I have known folks who make it a Friday treat without realizing that habit means hitting their blood pressure, cholesterol, and triglycerides with a triple punch every single week. When you add up the years, that is a lot of extra strain on a heart that does not bounce back like it used to. The marketing still sells you the same old promise. Have it your way. But when you are looking at the numbers and what those numbers mean for an aging heart, the only way this works in your favor is if it is an extremely rare indulgence. Because no amount of nostalgia makes your arteries forget what is in that bite. Number 1. KFC Chicken Pot Pie. This is one of those menu items that feels like it is doing you a favor. Warm, hearty, baked, not fried. But do not let that flaky crust fool you. Underneath the comfort food glow, this thing is a heart health ambush, especially for anyone over 50. A single pot pie hits you with around 1,750 milligrams of sodium, more than most older adults should eat in an entire day. And salt does not slip by unnoticed once you are past a certain age. Arteries lose their spring, kidneys are not as quick to clear it, and blood pressure spikes faster and stays higher. For someone already on the edge with hypertension, this is like throwing a log on the fire. Then there is the saturated fat, 25 grams in one go. The American Heart Association says most people who need to manage cholesterol should aim for about half that per day. Instead, you are getting 2 days' worth in a single cozy dinner. That is fuel for LDL cholesterol to keep building plaque in arteries that might already be narrowed from decades of wear. The crust? White flour, palm oil, and palm kernel oil, both heavy in saturated fat. The gravy? MSG, sodium phosphates, and other flavor enhancers that not only pump up sodium, but make you want another bite before you have even swallowed the first. And the chicken itself is not just roasted. Often it is phosphate marinated or even breaded first, sneaking in more salt and fat before it ever sees that pie tin. What you do not taste is just as important as what you do. Sodium is not only in the salt shaker, it is hiding in the marinade, the leavening, the gravy base, and the seasonings. That is how you wind up clearing your daily limit without even touching a side dish. And if you do add a biscuit and mashed potatoes with gravy, you have just blasted past 2,800 milligrams of sodium without blinking. I have seen people order it thinking they are skipping the deep-fried stuff, not realizing this is basically an ultra-processed entree dressed up in home-style clothing. Studies keep showing that heavy reliance on ultra-processed foods loaded with additives and refined starches tracks with worse heart health. And for older adults already managing blood pressure, cholesterol, or blood sugar, the impact is even sharper. Speaking of blood sugar, that crust and gravy pack about 60 grams of carbs, mostly refined. In younger bodies, you might burn that off without much trouble. In an older metabolism, it spikes blood sugar, raises triglycerides after the meal, and leaves you in that sluggish post-carb fog that is anything but heart-friendly. The emotional pull is real. Cold night, long day, no energy to cook. It is easy to fall for the $7 deal that promises comfort in a box. But nostalgia does not neutralize sodium, and marketing cannot erase the fat grams. That freshly prepared line, all it means is someone at the store assembled it. Nutritionally, it behaves a lot more like a fatty, salty pastry than a balanced dinner. If you loved this kind of thing growing up, I get it. I had a neighbor who swore by pot pies every Sunday night. But back then, portions were smaller, ingredients were simpler, and we were not all battling the same levels of hidden salt and processed oils. The modern version is a different beast entirely. That KFC pot pie is not a harmless comfort. It is a 2-day dose of saturated fat and a wallop of sodium in a package that looks innocent. Your heart does not care how warm and flaky it feels going down. It cares about the strain it has to deal with afterward. Some habits are not harmless just because they have been around for decades. Sometimes they are just slow trouble dressed up in nostalgia.